Welcome to Science at FMNH, a podcast and video series that explores the science behind the scenes at Chicago's Field Museum. For this episode, we asked collections and research staff to answer the question, why did you become a scientist?
I'm Lance Grandi. I'm Senior Vice President, Head of Collections and Research here at the Field Museum, but I'm also a curator in the Geology Department. I'm one of the curators of paleontology. I was always curious about natural history. As a kid, I collected rocks, I looked at animals, I used to keep fishes, and just about every aspect of natural history fascinated me. I actually didn't start working to be a professional scientist. I was a junior in college as a macroeconomics major at the University of Minnesota, and a friend of mine had brought back a fossil fish from Wyoming and gave it to me as a gift, and I was so fascinated by this thing. It kind of awoke all these memories in me of how I love fish, going fishing, and loved looking at rocks and things. So I took it to the professor in the geology department, this paleontologist, and asked him what it was. And he said that he wouldn't identify it for me, but if I took his course, I'd be able to identify it myself. And so I took his course, and I was so just drawn in by it all that the next semester I dropped out of economics and business school and started in the geology department and went on and got a degree in geology and graduate degree, and then went into biology and went on for a PhD in biology. So I actually ended up pursuing both of my interests in natural history, geology and biology.
Well, I'm Janet Voigt. I am Associate Curator of Invertebrate Zoology here at the Field Museum. My taxonomic expertise are cephalopod mollusks, especially octopus. And it's not octopi, it's octopuses. I think I've always kind of been the type of person who asks questions about why and how. I've always found animals really fascinating, even if I didn't know much about them. Those were the types of things that interested me, asking questions and finding out how things work and why they came to be like that. Once I realized it was possible to have a career doing that type of question answering myself and discovering things that nobody else knew before, it was like, wow, I want to do this. I was working in the University of Iowa hospitals as a research associate. For the first time in my life, my supervisor was an unmarried woman who was doing science. She was an MD, PhD, and she said, go to grad school. And so I applied to graduate school, wound up at the University of Arizona. The guy who was my temporary advisor was doing a field marine class, and he needed one more person to sign up to have the course go to meet quota. So I signed up, and I started working on these little octopuses who were just palm-sized. And so I started doing that, and basically things just picked up and everything was great.
My name's Danielle Rebe. I'm a research assistant in the anthropology department at the Field Museum of Natural History. Well, my dad was always big into history, and I grew up, he was in the military when I was a kid, so I grew up moving around and visiting different cultures, and I got to experience this, and it was a wonderful exposure at such a young age, and it really got me interested in looking at different cultures. But I feel like in order to study cultures in the present, you have to look at them in the past first, because that's where it all began. It's kind of like a puzzle if you look at it. You get all these different pieces, and you have to figure out how they fit together in order to form the bigger picture. That's always intrigued me and kept me interested in figuring out the archaeological past. And who doesn't love digging in the dirt? Let's be honest. Come on, it's fun. You get a great tan, a little bit of sweat, nice workout. It's a great time.
My name is Margaret Thayer. I'm an associate curator in the zoology department, and specifically a curator of insects in the division of insects. My father was a scientist, a biochemist actually, but with a strong interest in natural history, which he had gotten from his family. And so there was kind of a thread of appreciating nature and being interested in it and observing it and everything. And the year I graduated from college, heard about a job at the Museum of Comparative Zoology at Harvard, mounting and labeling little insects that would go into the collection. I'd had a little bit of exposure to that museum through a friend, but didn't really know that much about museum collections or anything like that. But I'd been kind of starting to get interested in insects, and so I thought, oh, that'd be a good chance to learn something about insects. I was mostly working with beetles. That was what my boss worked on. And I'd ask him questions about, oh, gee, this one's different from that. And, he would tell me stories about all these different beetles. It only took about 2 weeks for me to get hooked on beetles. And so it's been beetles ever since.
My name is Philip Heck. I'm the Robert A. Pritzker Assistant Curator for Meteoritics and Polar Studies. And that means that I'm a curator in charge for the meteorites, but also for rocks and minerals. So I was always interested in nature and how nature works. As a kid, I spent a lot of time outdoors, taking long hikes with my parents, look at not only the nature on Earth, but also looking up to the sky at night. And my parents explained me the constellations, or the basic constellations like Orion. And I could see the Orion Nebula. And then I wanted to learn more about these stars and the nebula, and I asked my parents to give me children's books about astronomy for Christmas or for birthday presents. So I started getting more interested and learning that, like in Orion Nebula, new stars are born. So it was basically a lifelong interest, and I always thought if I have the opportunity, I would like to learn more about it.
My name is Laura Briscoe, and I am a research assistant in the botany department. Why did I become a scientist? I have been completely astounded by the natural world since I was very little. And I was lucky enough to have parents who really fostered that in me and really supported my excitement and really encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to do with that. And for the longest time, I was really interested in insects. And I remember being 10 years old and being completely blown away by parasitic wasps. Just thinking, this is the coolest thing in the world. These wasps that will sting a tarantula and then lay their eggs inside of it, but the tarantula will still be alive and the eggs will hatch and then the babies will eat the tarantula. I mean, it doesn't get cooler than that for a 10-year-old kid. I remember the moment I first looked through a microscope at a leafy liverwort and I said, this is it. This is all I want to do for the rest of my life. I just want to look at these things forever.
I'm Torsten Diko. I'm a postdoctoral researcher here at the Field Museum of Natural History. I study the evolution of flies.
I don't really know how it happened, but I guess my parents always, pointed out things here and there. My dad is sort of interested in natural scientists at all. And when it became apparent I have to decide what I want to do at university or even at the last stages of high school back in Germany, I always liked the sciences better than anything else. So biology was the most fascinating ones, and particularly just the species diversity. Not so much, physiology or genetics, which is important, but really to look at specimens. And I had friends that were local insect collectors who are, publishing new species as well. So I just, tagged along, and that's how I became an entomologist.